On a crisp autumn afternoon at Buckingham Palace, the serene beauty of tradition collided with the brash arrogance of modern showmanship in a way that left an indelible mark on everyone present. Axel the Devastator Carter, a freshly victorious MMA champion, strutted onto the scene like a peacock in a designer tracksuit, his voice cutting through the respectful murmurs of tourists snapping photos of the iconic royal guards. With a swagger born from pay-per-view glory, Axel mocked the stoic Silas Pennington, a 32-year-old guard standing motionless in his scarlet tunic, dismissing military training as a relic of the past. Useless, rigid, and no match for his cage-fighting prowess. He danced around Pennington, throwing punches and kicks inches from the guard's face, his every move a theatrical display meant to dazzle the crowd and prove his point. To Axel, Pennington's stillness was weakness, a mannequin in a fancy uniform, ripe for ridicule. But beneath that polished exterior, Pennington was no mere symbol. He was a combat veteran, tempered by 3 tours in Afghanistan and 1 in Iraq. His discipline forged in life-or-death stakes far removed from Axel's spotlight. The MMA fighter's taunts grew louder, his demonstrations bolder as he circled Pennington like a predator sizing up prey, oblivious to the coiled readiness beneath the guard's calm facade. The crowd watched, some with unease, others with curiosity, as Axel's performative dominance clashed with Pennington's unyielding restraint. It was a stark contrast, one man playing to an audience, the other rooted in duty. When Axel finally crossed the line, grabbing Pennington's uniform, the guard's swift, minimal response flipped the script, revealing the true power of discipline over bravado, and shocking the palace grounds into stunned silence. Under the golden glow of an autumn afternoon at Buckingham Palace, the stage was set for an unexpected lesson in humility when Axel the Devastator Carter, a brash MMA champion, decided to challenge the quiet dignity of Silas Pennington, a royal guard whose scarlet tunic and bearskin cap masked a wealth of real combat experience. Axel, riding high from a controversial victory the night before, bulldozed through the crowd with an abrasive confidence, his garish tracksuit a stark contrast to the palace's timeless elegance. He sneered at Pennington's immaculate stillness, loudly proclaiming that military training was a joke. Too stiff, too ceremonial, and no match for the raw aggression he'd honed in the octagon. To him, Pennington was just a toy soldier, a relic of tradition ripe for mockery, as he shadowboxed inches from the guard's face, daring a reaction. But Silas Pennington was no ordinary figurehead. At 32, the subtle lines around his eyes whispered of 3 grueling tours in Afghanistan, 1 in Iraq, and countless classified operations. Years where his skills were tested not for applause, but for survival. Beneath his ceremonial poise lay a coiled readiness, a depth Axel couldn't fathom. The MMA fighter's taunts escalated, his performative punches and kicks drawing uneasy gasps from tourists until he made his fatal misstep, grabbing Pennington's pristine uniform. In an instant, the guard's response shattered Axel's bravado. With a fluid, almost effortless pivot and a precise grip on Axel's wrist, Pennington redirected the fighter's momentum, forcing compliance without a hint of wasted energy. It wasn't a brawl or a show, it was the surgical application of combat expertise, honed in war zones where mistakes cost lives, not points. Axel, caught off guard, floundered, his swagger evaporating as Pennington's calm voice declared, "Step back, sir. You've made physical contact with a Queen's Guard." The crowd, now a buzzing hive of awe, witnessed the undeniable truth. Real combat experience tempered by discipline and purpose outshone Axel's hollow theatrics. Palace security swooped in, but the lesson was already clear. Pennington's quiet strength had turned the fighter's arrogance into a spectacle of defeat, leaving the courtyard electric with respect for the guard's understated power. Amid the rustling leaves and crisp autumn breeze at Buckingham Palace, a scene unfolded that underscored the enduring power of tradition and duty, as Silas Pennington, a royal guard, stood as a living testament to centuries of British honor against the reckless disrespect of Axel the Devastator Carter, an MMA fighter intoxicated by his own fame. Tourists gathered in respectful clusters, cameras poised to capture the iconic scarlet tunics and bearskin caps, symbols of a legacy stretching back over 300 years. For them, Pennington was more than a photo opportunity. He embodied a tradition of service, his brass buttons gleaming from a morning ritual older than the guard himself. Yet Axel, swaggering through the crowd in a gaudy tracksuit, saw only a museum piece, dismissing the guard's stillness as fancy pants tradition and guys playing dress up. His loud jeers sliced through the courtyard's quiet reverence, mocking Pennington's duty as obsolete compared to his cage-fighting triumphs. To Axel, the guard's immaculate posture was a target for ridicule, not respect, a challenge to his modern bravado. But Pennington's silence wasn't weakness. It was the bedrock of his role, forged through years of combat and cemented by an unwavering commitment to the crown. When Axel crossed the line, gripping the guard's uniform in a brazen act of defiance, Pennington's response, a swift, minimal maneuver, restored order with the authority of tradition itself. "Step back, sir," he commanded, his voice steady as palace security closed in. A reminder that duty isn't just ceremony, but a living force. The crowd's mood shifted from curiosity to reverence. Their widened perimeter around Pennington's post, a silent acknowledgement of the respect he'd earned. An elderly gentleman murmured, "Remarkable restraint," while a silver-haired veteran in a wheelchair nodded, her pin gleaming with pride. "That's how it's done." Even as Axel sputtered protests, escorted away by officers, Pennington resumed his post, eyes forward, rifle perfect, embodying the unbroken thread of honor that Axel's antics couldn't unravel. The incident revealed a truth. Tradition and duty, far from being relics, command respect through their quiet strength, a legacy Axel underestimated and the palace grounds reaffirmed, leaving tourists and onlookers alike with a deeper appreciation for the guards who stand as sentinels of history. On a breezy autumn day at Buckingham Palace, Axel, the Devastator Carter, an MMA champion brimming with overconfidence, strutted onto the scene, oblivious to the storm his arrogance was about to unleash. Fresh from a split-decision victory on pay-per-view, Axel bulldozed through the crowd, his designer tracksuit flashing garish logos as he loudly proclaimed the uselessness of military training, targeting Silas Pennington, a royal guard standing in silent vigil. With a smirk and a swagger, he taunted Pennington's stillness, calling it a joke compared to his octagon triumphs, his voice echoing across the courtyard as he shadowboxed inches from the guard's face. Axel's overconfidence blinded him to the reality beneath Pennington's scarlet tunic. A combat veteran with tours in Afghanistan and Iraq, not a mere statue for his amusement. Convinced he could dominate, Axel pushed further, grabbing the guard's uniform in a bold display of hubris, expecting no resistance. The consequences came swiftly. In one fluid motion, Pennington redirected Axel's momentum, clamping his wrist with precision, and issued a calm but firm warning. "Step back, sir. You've made physical contact with a Queen's Guard. That's an offense." Axel's bravado crumbled. His attempts to counter with cage-fighting moves faltered against Pennington's unyielding technique, and his smug grin turned to startled disbelief. Palace security descended, their radios crackling as they closed the distance, transforming Axel's stunt into a legal nightmare. "I'm a professional athlete," he protested, his voice rising with desperation as officers escorted him away, his once loyal cronies, Derek and Shaw, distancing themselves, phones lowered as their footage became potential evidence. The crowd, once drawn by Axel's antics, now buzzed with the weight of his miscalculation. Assaulting a Queen's Guard wasn't a game, but a crime, as a palace representative coolly noted, clipboard in hand, promising a review of tourist videos. Axel's overconfidence had led him to underestimate not just Pennington, but the gravity of tradition and law he'd mocked. As he was led through the gates, his swagger replaced by indignant sputtering, Pennington resumed his post, a silent sentinel whose discipline underscored the lesson. Overconfidence invites consequences, and disrespecting duty comes at a steep price. One Axel learned in full view of a stunned Buckingham courtyard. In the shadow of Buckingham Palace, beneath an autumn sky streaked with falling leaves, a striking display of restraint unfolded as Silas Pennington, a royal guard, faced the unrelenting provocations of Axel the Devastator Carter, an MMA fighter drunk on his own bravado. Axel stormed onto the scene, his voice a jarring contrast to the courtyard's quiet reverence, mocking Pennington's military training as he danced around the guard, throwing punches and kicks mere inches from his face. Clad in a loud tracksuit, Axel sneered at the guard's stillness, labeling it weakness, a ceremonial farce unfit for the real combat he claimed to master. Yet Pennington, a 32-year-old veteran of Afghanistan and Iraq, stood unmoved, his discipline a steel wall against Axel's taunts. Beneath his polished tunic, honed by years of life-or-death decisions, lay a power Axel couldn't grasp, one rooted not in aggression, but in restraint. The fighter's antics escalated, his ego unchecked, until he grabbed Pennington's uniform, crossing a line from spectacle to threat. In that moment, the guard's response revealed the true strength of restraint. With a subtle pivot and a single economical motion, Pennington seized Axel's wrist, applying a joint manipulation so precise it forced compliance without a hint of excess force. "Step back, sir," he said, his voice steady and conversational, yet carrying the weight of authority across the stunned crowd. Axel flailed, his cage-fighting counters useless against a technique designed not to dazzle, but to neutralize. Fast, clean, and safe. This wasn't sport, it was security, a testament to military training's focus on ending threats with minimal harm. Palace security arrived, but Pennington's restraint had already spoken. His hold never tightened beyond necessity, his face betraying no anger or triumph, only duty. The off-duty military man in the crowd nodded knowingly, later explaining to onlookers, "It's not about fighting, it's about control." Axel's bluster faded as he was led away, while Pennington resumed his post, rifle perfect, eyes forward. The courtyard, now hushed with respect, bore witness to a profound truth. Real power lies not in reckless force, but in the disciplined restraint that turns chaos into order, a lesson etched into the crisp air of that unforgettable afternoon. On a brisk autumn day at Buckingham Palace, the courtyard buzzed with tourists, their cameras trained on the stoic royal guards, when Axel, the Devastator Carter, an MMA fighter flushed with arrogance, swaggered in and turned a routine photo op into a spectacle that shifted everyone's perspective. Initially, the crowd, clutching guidebooks and phones, was drawn to Axel's loud bravado as he mocked Silas Pennington, a guard standing rigid in his scarlet tunic, dismissing his military training as outdated. Axel's theatrical punches and taunts, delivered inches from Pennington's face, pulled curious glances, some amused, others uneasy, as he strutted like a peacock in his flashy tracksuit. To the onlookers, it was entertainment, a brash American stirring up the quiet dignity of British tradition. But when Axel grabbed Pennington's uniform, the mood flipped like a switch. In a heartbeat, the guard's response, a fluid, minimal motion that pinned Axel's wrist and halted his aggression, stunned the crowd into silence. Gasps rippled through the air as Pennington's calm command, "Step back, sir," echoed with authority, revealing a depth beyond ceremony. What had been a sideshow became a revelation. This wasn't a statue, but a combat veteran, his restraint forged in Afghanistan and Iraq. The tourist's perception shifted, cameras lowered, chatter faded, and a wider berth formed around Pennington's post, a silent tribute to his quiet power. An elderly man, his voice seasoned with experience, murmured, "Remarkable restraint," while a silver-haired woman in a wheelchair, her veteran's pin glinting, smiled knowingly. "That's how it's done." A father whispered to his son about discipline, turning a tourist moment into a lesson. Even the off-duty military man in the crowd, who'd watched with a knowing eye, spoke up. "That's the same composure you see in combat zones." As Axel was escorted away by palace security, his protests drowned by the rustling leaves, the onlookers resumed their photos, but with a difference. Excitement had morphed into awe. Pennington stood unchanged, eyes forward, rifle steady. Yet to those who'd witnessed his mastery, he was no longer just a guard, but a symbol of duty's understated strength, a shift in perception that lingered long after the courtyard settled back into its timeless rhythm. The confrontation between Axel Carter and Silas Pennington at Buckingham Palace offers timeless lessons that resonate deeply as we age. First, it teaches us that true strength lies not in loud boasts or flashy displays, but in quiet competence and restraint, qualities Pennington embodied as he neutralized Axel's aggression with minimal force. For seniors, this mirrors the wisdom gained over decades. Real power comes from knowing when to act and when to stand firm. Second, it reminds us to respect the unseen depth in others. Axel underestimated Pennington, seeing only a uniform, not the veteran beneath. A mistake we can avoid by honoring the hidden stories of those around us, from neighbors to old friends. Finally, it underscores that discipline and duty endure beyond youth's bravado. As we navigate life's later chapters, Pennington's steadfastness inspires us to hold fast to our values, whether tending a garden or mentoring the young. In a world obsessed with noise, this tale urges us to cherish the quiet dignity of experience, ours and others, and to face challenges with the grace of those who've weathered storms, proving that life's richest lessons often whisper, not shout.